Today we're going to talk about Lap Dance, which is a game about customer satisfaction. In Lap Dance, you play as a manager, a newly recruited manager in a strip club, trying to manage the strip club and entertain your customers in the most satisfactory means possible. You use drinks, alcohol, strippers, favors, cigars, services, staff members. Do your best to try to keep your customers happy. The customers vary and are different each game. You never know who's going to come through the door of your club, and you need to do the best you can with the resources you have. That's Lap Dance. At the beginning of the game, when you're setting up, you draw 5 random customers out of the pool of customers that the game comes with. There are a variety of customers, each have a special ability of their own, which will change the rules slightly for that particular round, depending, which is thematic to what the character does, right? And you place, as soon as you draw them, you cover them with face-down desire cards, which will also be different every game. And then you flip over the desire card, you start the timer, and players will look into their hands and try to choose cards which match those desire cards. The first player to make his choice, you can choose up to 4 cards to put in your stack. The cards that you place face down, you select to serve the customer with, is called the stack. You place them down up to 4, and when you're finished, you take the player order card, which will determine your order. So, if you choose fast, you get to take a player order, the first player order card, and you get to play first. If you choose second, if you take long time, you will end up being last, and you will play events last, and you will have last dibs on the staff members of the strip club of the bar, because the staff members are there, and according to the number of players, you can influence them to get an extra stuff or get an extra cocktail if you need an extra cocktail, or get an extra symbol here and there. It will help you match what you need with the requirements of the desire. So, for example, the bouncer allows you to cancel an event that has been played of you. Most of these events are generally attacks towards you, which you can play in a separate phase. Monica, the stage manager, can act as a stripper, can go out and kind of sort of, you kind of need one less stripper to satisfy your customer. You can spend a favor token, you can go up to the stage manager. Monica, do you mind just filling in? Is that okay with you? Please? And if you have enough favor, if you have enough heart tokens, you place it there. These vary according to the number of players, how many times she can be influenced, and she gives you that one last stripper token that you need. Alfonso, the accountant, he allows you to re-roll some more dice, because I'll talk about the rolling mechanic, how it works soon, but he allows you to do something. Jerry, the floor manager, actually has a special deck of cards which you can draw to gain more cards. So if you're running out of cards, this is a possible action that you could do. Or you could also, to gain more cards, you never draw more cards at the end of the turn unless there is an ability which allows you to do so. Or if one of the rewards for satisfying a customer is a card. Or through Jerry, the floor manager, who has a special deck of his own of special cards which you can play during your turn. And you draw them by influencing Jerry. Nicola gives you a special drink, which you are missing, and Dominique gives you that last cigar that you're missing. Each of the cards you can play in your stack, be them dancers, be them drinks, be them services, be them any special things which you play, all of them have a symbol at the bottom. Some of them have an actual symbol, which is a need that the player might have, a desire that the player might have. Some others have a die, which means you just add a die to your hand, and some others have a die and a symbol, at which case they do both, right? It's quite simple the way this works. So when you've played the cards in your stack, let's say these are the 3 cards in my stack, that means I will roll 2 dice, and I have already 2 symbols. The dice will give you more of these symbols, but there's a dice mechanic on how you do this. Essentially, you roll the dice according to how many you get, according to the number of dice symbols on your stack. You roll them, and you will have a choice to either keep or re-roll the rest, right? You can choose a few to keep and re-roll the rest. Once you re-roll the rest, you can re-roll as many times as you like. However, there is one side of the dice which is the lock side, which is the sheriff symbol. If you roll a die and the sheriff symbol appears, the sheriff star symbol appears, that die is locked and is out of your hand. You can't use it anymore. So you can roll as many times as you like to try to get the one result that you need, but every time you roll, you have a 1 in 6 possibility of that die going out of play, right? So you're of losing that die. If you lose all of your dice, there is a mitigation mechanic where you have your assistant, right? So according to how many locked dice you get, so if you happen to be really unlucky and all of the dice become locked, you still get a benefit at the end of the round through your junior assistant, which according to the number of locked dice you happen to have, you get a benefit. So you might draw a card, or get more favor, or get some cards and favor, or if you happen to get 5 locked dice, which never happened in the games I've played, you get to re-roll all of them and start over. So there is a risk taking when you re-roll, but also if you happen to be really, really unlucky, there is a mechanic which makes it not that punishing at the same time. So that's kind of cool that there is a dice mechanic, but it is also balanced with a reward mechanic if you happen to go too bad. Right, and that's cool. Considering the sort of environment this game is meant to be played, I think the fact that players are given the sort of feeling of yes, you're taking a risk, you might lose a die, but at the same time there is the light-hearted feel of if you do really terribly, you'll still get something back, and I think that's perfectly fitting for a game like this of this style. The game itself is not a regular sort of party game. I mean, there's quite a bit of things going on in reality. You start off with a real-time choice, so essentially you start a timer. In reality, you could even play it without the timer because you want to get the first priority, but you have only 1 minute to choose the cards that you want to play that turn. And you have a maximum of 4, you have to choose carefully, look at what you need, look at what the customer needs, and you have not only the pressure of the timer, but also you have the pressure of your friends, who are a second timer put on top of that. Because the first player to actually say, okay, I'm stopping, can take the first priority token, and there you can gain 2 benefits. One of which is spending favor tokens on the aforementioned staff members, and there is a limit on how many people can place tokens on them. So once you've placed it down in a 2-player game, for example, the other player cannot place again. In a 4-player game, 3 of the 4 can place on the same guy. So there's that. And the second one is you get to play event cards first. Event cards there's a separate phase where you play event cards, which are a special type of card which you may draw, which are played in a separate phase. And these events are generally attacks on each other, stealing from each other, taking cards from each other, a special ability that happens, mostly things like these. But you get to do those first. But then the game moves into a second phase, which is less lackluster, where the players roll their dice and make careful decisions onto which they roll, which they do not. Of course, careful in the limitations of a party game, right? But they need to match symbols. They try to min-max, do the best possible they can with the matching of the symbols. There is some thought that needs to be put in there. You know, it's not the second phase of the action phase. The game is not really completely mindless. There is some thought that needs to be put in to make sure that you make the best possible choices and keep and re-roll the best possible combinations of things to try to get the best return, the best amount of money. At the end of the game, the player with the most money wins the game. So you need to make sure you balance out gaining the amount of money you need to win, but at the same time satisfying needs, which each desire card has a few needs, and satisfying the need that gives you what you need. Because if you satisfy, for example, one need, you will get extra cards for the next customer, right? But that might not give you any cash, which is what wins you the game at the end. So there's a choice to make in which dice you roll. There's another choice to make in which of the customer's desires you satisfy, and there are the other choice is which events or special cards to play. So the action phase is relatively easygoing when comparing it to meatier, longer games, but is not as simple as many of the party games go. It's a kind of in between sort of game, I'd like to say. The game also comes with a set of optional party rules, is what they call them. Most of these rules are mostly activities that you would be given, and they come paired up or thematically paired with the actual customer that walks into the bar. But the thing with these party rules, they are usable in a very specific situation, right? They don't add any sort of benefit or loss to following them. They don't interfere with the game almost at all. They're almost unrelated to the actual rest of the gameplay, but they are activities that you could do to keep the game sort of lighthearted and fun. Some of them include shaking hands with each other every time someone does an activity. I add a small layer of lightheartedness over the game, which could be useful in a very specific sort of situation. From a gamer's point of view, me as a gamer, I prefer to play without them. Considering I've spent my late teens and early 20s playing the hard, long, thoughtful games, these rules seem kind of pointless to me, in that they're just something extra that I have to think about, which when I'm thinking about min-maxing my turn or making sure I'm doing the correct actions and playing, they're just there and don't add much, right? It depends on how you tackle the game. The game is mechanical when you play, if you want to play it that way. But if you're playing with a group which doesn't really care about winning, but you're playing a game about a script club, you're pulling jokes onto each other, looking at the art, laughing about the art. In that case, those rules come in sort of handy if you want to add them in. Continuing with the unusualness of its kind of point where it sits in between a filler and the party and a medium weight. It's not really medium weight, but considering the weight level that it sits in, there are also a few things which you don't generally see in party games. For example, each player starts off the game with a slightly different hand. Each player starts off the game asymmetrically. So there's asymmetric starting hands for the players, which is cool in a way, because each player starts off slightly different in what they can do, which is really important in the beginning of the game. Because if all of the players have the exact same hand in the first turn, they would play probably, because they only have 6 cards and they need to play 4, they would probably play the exact same hand. But it's also thematic in that each manager has different resources at his disposal at the beginning of the game, and then depending on how he acts and how he satisfies his customers, he gains or keeps some of those resources. I like that. I like the fact that there are these little things that are put in to kind of stabilize the game and reduce the lacklusterness of it. And these are things which gamers who are looking for a party game will appreciate. These include this asymmetrical starting hands, junior assistant card, which I showed before, where if you happen to roll dice and too many of them go out, there is a mitigation mechanic so that the luck is kind of sort of balanced a little bit there. There is also the player order. The player order is a very Euro mechanic where the player who goes first gets benefits and first choice on which actions he would like to take, and blocking off of other players by taking that action before them. These are mechanics which are generally found in bigger, meatier games, and that's why it's unique in its own right, because these mechanics which we've seen in games which have much more weight are placed in and used for their benefits in a game which is meant to be lighthearted. And that's why I think that Lap Dance will stay in my collection, because of the unique position it holds in board gamedom. The unique theme, which is daring in its own right for a company like Artipia, which has a few games which have had a good following, right? To publish a game with a niche appeal, right? Because obviously the theme is not going to appeal to everyone. There are people who will enjoy something like this and some people who will not. And so for a company with a commercial product to tackle a theme like this, I think it's very unique, very interesting to come from a relatively mainstream publisher. The second thing is these Euro mechanics, which are placed into a light party game, which makes it a very, very... For a regular player, for someone who doesn't really play Euro games, it will just seem like it's there. But for someone who plays Euro games, to have those mechanics in a light party game makes the system kind of interesting, kind of unique, kind of strange. Strange in a very tasteful sort of mode. It's weird. It's different, you know? Lap Dance is completely different from other party games I've played, but it's also completely different in one group and another, not only because of the ways to play it that are within the rules, but because of the way it will be treated by the players who play it. Lap Dance is a unique game. I think it holds a very unique position. Very interesting. I'm looking forward to playing it with different groups to see how it will go down in different situations. But nevertheless, if it doesn't end up being your thing, it's still, I think Artipius have to be congratulated for having the guts to deal with this theme and doing the best they can to deal with it as neutrally as possible. Because for once, there is a game that actually calls for the art to be sexy. I would be totally pissed off if this game did not have sexy art, and then something like Tanto Cuore or something like, I don't know, a dungeon crawler has sexier art than this game. For once, a game justifies the sexy art, and there is some sexy art in this game, and it is totally fitting in here. I mean, I would be totally pissed off if there was no sexy art in a game about strip clubs. I mean, there would be something wrong with the world if a game about strip clubs is made where you have strippers and the strippers are actually wearing raincoats or something. I think they couldn't have done a much better job than they have with regards to neutrality and lack of offensiveness. I personally did not find anything offensive in it at all. There is equal representation of both genders. All of the art is sexy but tasteful. All of the art is very well done, by the way, and the design of it is quite nice. There are some colors which are not really seen. In the beginning of the game, you need to distribute cards to players according to the color. That's how the starting hands are formed, and that color is not really that visible, but it's only used in the very beginning of the game for like a second and a half until you find the cards. So it really doesn't matter at all, but by the end, it's kind of fine then. Well, it would be cool if that is more visible. It makes just the setup a little bit easier. Other than that, I think that's the word I would describe Lap Dance with. Quirky, strange, weird, unusual, and quite sexy.
Shibidoo-wop-bop-bop.
Shibidoo-pop-bop, shibidoo, 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 shabidoo-da-bida.
Ba-da-ba-beep-beep-bop.
Ba-ba-da-beep-bop-bop-bop. Ba-da-ba-ba-bum. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Should I get naked?